Is the way people will carry us.
It's just the driver of the two vehicles that were completely burnt. This one was here screaming.
What do you recommend the government do to support this sector?
Direct intervention, that's what every government all over the world has done.
We are not a parallel security structure. A Motepu core is a complementary core.
What I will not encourage Christians to do is to carry dagger and follow anybody. No.
Join us on The Breakfast, 7 a.m., Monday to Friday.
There has to be a decision point. The way your baby's presenting, we have to rush you in. And my partner at the time was like, "You going to cut her? Are you going to cut her? Is it going to leave a scar?" And I said, "What? Am I a belly dancer? What is the problem here?"
No, I'm vulnerable about the future of the children, the future of mine and the future of the generation of my children.
I want to have nude pictures taken. Of you? Yes,
Yeah,
but
we
without
had
showing my private parts. I want to put it in my front room. And they said, "You can't do that. People will be embarrassed."
You can't do anything, then you blame everybody. You took that choice.
Hello and welcome. It's Nimasa This Week, the voice of maritime, of matters affecting our
Nimasa This Week, the voice of maritime, showing on this channel.
Coming up this morning, Nigeria gets into a pivotal point with a surge in political campaigns. These in the midst of increase in debt, inflation, and discontent across the country. We'll be talking the state of the nation with Sat Guru. And also coming up this morning is Off the Press. You will be going to work because of the sit at home on Mondays. But welcome to The Breakfast. I am Osaogie Ogbonwa. As always, we start with top trending stories, and we have two very interesting stories for you this morning. First of all, of course, starting with one that I just mentioned, and that is the founder and owner of DA Communications, Raymond Dokpesi. It's a name that has been known for a very, very long time, for probably since the 80s or even earlier, with the foundation of DA Communications. Of course, here in Lagos, well, across the country, everyone knows of AIT. But of course, aside his interest in media and television, he also, of course, got involved with politics a couple of years ago. If you remember, in the 2015, after the elections in 2015, there was a lot of clamor, lots of conversations going on with regards to the fight against corruption. And one of the biggest stories then was the $2.1 billion that was allegedly embezzled by certain persons in the previous administration. Most importantly, Sambo Dasuki, the NSA back then. Of course, we all remember how that trial went and how that case went. He was in prison for a very, very long time. Held by the security agents, Chief Raymond Dokpesi, who's, of course, the founder of DA Communications. He, of course, had his own, time with the EFCC and with Nigeria security agencies. The court case, that has lasted for a very, very long time. I believe sometime in April, there was a court ruling that by the Court of Appeal, basically, that seemingly set him free and asked that the case be thrown out because the EFCC couldn't really prove its case. But yesterday, the Chief Justice John Soho of the Federal High Court in Abuja held that Raymond Dokpesi had no criminal allegations and the charges against him weren't strong enough, didn't hold any water. He basically held that no criminal charges or allegations currently raised against Raymond Dokpesi should stand. If you remember also, he was the organizing committee chairman of the PDP's national conference in 2015. The Federal High Court yesterday ordered that the EFCC should go further and remove him from their watch list. And so that's really what has created most of the controversy, mostly because this is, just almost immediately after he threw his support behind former Lagos State Governor Bola Ahmed Tinubu, who, from what the media is saying, very likely would be running for president in 2023. It really, this is my perspective now, it really could just be coincidence. It could be timing, and that's what makes it look fishy. He has every right, of course, Bola Ahmed Tinubu has every right, and we've said it multiple times, to run for president. And at the same time, every person who, is a Nigerian has every right to support him time. And there's nothing really, really surprising about it. What really has caught a lot of people's attention is the fact that this is happening, almost seemingly back to back. Immediately he throws the support. The court then orders the EFCC to take him off, their watch list. And that's what, everyone is pointing out, as seeming like, immediately you support a part of the government, some controversy. But another thing that I will point out with regards to this case, it seems like it's yet another occasion where the EFCC, and, we can never really tell who exactly to blame here, but where the EFCC has once again, failed to prove its case against some of the people that were very, very popular in the news, while being accused of corruption or money laundering or misappropriation of funds when the government came to power in 2015. One of those names, once again, that, of course, it seems like the EFCC has failed to fully prosecute. And it's one of the reasons that we've continued to say in Nigeria that we need to do better with our criminal justice system, and mostly with the investigative aspect of it. So we don't continue to have these allegations and these arrests and these hounding of persons. Then eventually the court throws out these cases, and there's really nothing that EFCC can do at that point. It makes it really, really seem like some of these things are really political instead of actual money laundering charges, and they would, and maybe they only existed in the first place because they belong to the opposition political party in the country. And I'm not necessarily saying that, that's exactly the case, but that's what it seems like. And it's one too many of these, situations where people are arrested, there's public, and media trial, and there's so much talk about it. The EFCC, of course, goes left and right, trying to ensure that these persons, are found guilty, in the media, but fails to, ensure that they're found guilty in court. And it's happened too many times, and we've seen so many of these, cases thrown out somehow, some way. It's just, yet another example. And so, it's a good time to look at these situations once again and say, who exactly is to blame here? Who exactly would we say maybe has gotten it wrong? Is it the EFCC and its prosecution? Is it the investigative part of it? Did they do their, groundwork and their homework, 100%? Before his name was even called out to be a suspect in the money laundering charge back then in 2015? Or is it the justice system, judicial system, that once again has shown that it has some loopholes here and there that can be beaten, no matter what the crime or the charge against you is? These are, for me, the biggest part of this whole conversation. I'm going to move away from the part where it says, immediately he supports Bola Ahmed Tinubu, his case is thrown out. Because I don't think that should be the focus. Even if, yes, it does look fishy. I want to assume and place the benefit of doubt and say, okay, maybe it's really just timing. Maybe the court was always going to do this regardless of whether he supported Bola Ahmed Tinubu or not. But once again, what more needs to be done by the Economic and Financial Crimes Commission? What more needs to be done by our judicial system to ensure that we don't continue to have these cases that really just look political instead of cases that are watertight and have actual facts behind them before a person is arrested or is even named in a corruption case? Well, that's on that story, and we'll move away from there and move to the southeast. Well, this actually happened in Lagos, but it's for the former governor of Anambra State, Peter Obi. He also ran in 2019 as vice presidential candidate under the PDP alongside former vice president Atiku Abubakar. shell accounts that are being opened, rather, in different countries around the world. The British Virgin Islands, the Cayman Islands, many places across the world, Cyprus even, where, rich people, wealthy people, politicians, kings and queens, businessmen open these shell accounts where they somehow, keep their money to avoid paying taxes in whichever country. But one of the challenges with it is the fact that there's a lot of people who run criminal gangs and use these shell accounts to hide money that has been either stolen or been gotten through drug peddling or money laundering. There is that. And that's what, of course, Peter Obi's name, came up with sometime last week. There was a lot of conversations about it, mostly about whether he did declare to the Nigerian government that he had those shell accounts or not. And then there were those who, maybe also mentioned that, well, the Premium Times report didn't necessarily say that these funds were stolen. They really only said that he had a shell account in a different country where money was kept, which isn't necessarily a crime, except it was not declared. But the biggest conversation really out of all of that was, the source of wealth. And that's what really has been, a source of conversation in the last couple of days with some of the persons who are running for or likely to run for president in 2023. And his name has always repeatedly come up, mostly because there's a lot of people who have looked at him and said, this is one of Nigeria's purest and cleanest politicians. One of the people that you look at and say, okay, this one has a really, really clean record from the time that he was governor. And there's really nothing that you can, point at and say, okay, well, he joined politics, and how politics even made him poorer because he had to step away from his businesses that he was running. He was Nigeria's only or sole importer of, certain items. He mentioned Heinz products, and then some wine, some alcohol. Basically, FMCG products is really not the source of his wealth. Most of his wealth came from businesses that he had run before joining politics and before becoming governor. But I want to share some of the thoughts of certain persons who reacted to this, which, I found pretty interesting. A guy here, Sadiq Tade, says, Peter Obi is so sure of his ways that he had to come openly on TV to explain his worth and the source of his money, even though he isn't in office. Also, remember how Seyi Makinde declared his assets in 2019, a better way to explain transparency and accountability. I found that very interesting. And also, Safin, his name is Ugo, also, put out the statement, said, low-key, it's annoying that he had to go to clear his name. Some people have, heroin kingpin histories, and I'm probably going to skip that one. Well, I'll go ahead. He said some people have heroin kingpin histories and drove bullion vans into their houses, but have become, the next messiah. When you're from, he goes on to say, when you're from a certain section of the country, your kaftan has been white and stainless before. Your kaftan rather has to be white and stainless before anyone considers you being worthy of presidency. From other parts of the country, instead, you could be a repentant message in that post. And this one also here says, Peter Obi is a better person than me, and of course referring to how the former president was described later 2014. Nigerians said these things because their president allowed them to exercise the rights or their rights to insult him. I'm going to share one part again. It says here, Peter Obi is a better person than me because, well, I won't send Nigerians. The standards Nigerians expect from Peter Obi, not even Buhari, was this scrutinized. Obi has to explain his wealth and his standards of governance to people that elected Buhari twice. And that's from a guy called Sir William. These are just some of the reactions that I found pretty interesting, with regards that they have. We've heard, we've seen, we've, heard, of investigations, we've, found them, either from another part of the country or from a different political party. The conversation is entirely different. The standards are different. The questions are different. The interrogation is completely different, regardless of how clean this person's past seems to be. You see people still go ahead to dig as far as they can, dig until they find crude oil, just to ensure that they, paint them dirty and ensure that, they find something that is, that makes them not worthy. Why don't we have the same standards for every single person who wants to run for political office in Nigeria, regardless of where you come from, regardless of what part of what tribe or what, or if you remember in 2019, there was a pre-election debate that, certain persons, of course, attended. Nigerians forgave every single blunder on certain political aspirants. and of course scrutinized the other ones, with all they had, with all the weaponry that they could bring forth. There were so many blunders on a certain, group of people. 2023, where you can already tell that there are certain people who have questionable characters, who you can already tell don't in any way deserve to even consider political space in Nigeria. But they will not be asked these questions. They would be given soft landing. They would be given, basically a free expressway to run, and contest for those seats. And those who seemingly, have, a better standard, who seemingly, have better quality, who seemingly have a better track record, would be scrutinized back and forth. And it makes you once again, start to agree with those who say that we get the leaders that we deserve in Nigeria. It might be a hurtful truth, get the leaders that we deserve in Nigeria.
Increase the reach of your events or business services. To advertise on PlusTvAfrica, please.
Businesses in Africa can be very challenging. In Nigeria, it is particularly intimidating, and successful builders have learned how to navigate a hostile environment to unlock opportunities. But one major challenge businesses face is how to filter through the noise and identify where they do.
On the breakfast on Plus agencies, pilots, engineers, air traffic controllers resign en masse. It says also, federal government should have borrowed to grow economy, not only exit recession, and that's from former government. And SARS, Lagos police warn against planned memorial protest. And State Congress, APC makes drug test mandatory for contestants in Kano. Nigerian Eagle, pilots, engineers warn National Assembly to steer clear of NCAA, say reps undermining agency's autonomy. And also, leave us out of politics, IPOB warns Senator Uba. 2022 gubernatorial elections, I'm ready to contest and win Ekiti, says Oni. Away from the Daily Independent, the Daily Trust now. Ministers' sack looms as Buhari. Constituents tackle Gbajabiamila over delay in declaring late Plateau rep's seat vacant. Also on the Daily Trust this morning, 1.3 million Nigerian girls drop out of schools annually, says UNICEF. We can also see further devaluation would worsen poverty, unemployment. Expert counters Oshimbajo. And also anti-open grazing. It's senseless to enact unforceable law, says Reigns expert.